go.
Hello everyone, welcome, welcome. My name is Rickie Freedman. I am the owner of Reiki by Rickie, Reiki Space and Learning Place. And I am very thrilled to bring to you my dear, dear friend and soul daughter, Kelly Curran, who is going to share a very personal, profound, and deeply healing near-death experience. So Kelly and I have been connected for many years since I moved here to the Harrisburg area. We both really feel this very, very deeply. And she was, of course, my Reiki client and Reiki student all the way through to becoming a Reiki Master teacher. She is an amazing artist, and we'll talk about that through this story, and managed our Reiki Space Art Gallery wall for many years as well. And all these experiences got interwoven to bring her to exactly this moment. We are very honored that Kelly is sharing her story with us. This is the first time since this happened 6 years ago that she is sharing her story publicly. So Kelly, I'm going to let you share.
Thank you, Rickie.
Yes,
it's an honor to be with you.
Yes, love it.
So I'll go back to the beginning. I was a very sensitive child, very sensitive to energy. I can remember being around my great-grandmother and wanting to spend time with her because I knew that she would pass soon. So I tried to, plan extra time to be around her. And I was told later by a friend of mine who's also a medium that I was born on a very significant moon, and we found out it's a full moon penumbral lunar eclipse, and she was saying it has to do with visions and seeing into the veil and things like that, which has definitely played a role in my life. When I was a kid, I had a few experiences with angels, and then I would, every night before bed, I would see these lights come into my bedroom and move around, and they were all different colors, and it was very comforting to me. And I remember saying to my best friend at the time, what colored lights do you see in your bedroom? And she said, what are you talking about? Wow. And so that's when I kind of learned that not everybody was having these experiences, and I kind of didn't really talk about them after that. So I kind of turned my gifts down middle school, high school, to go with the flow of the crowd, and I just thought it would be easier to blend in with people if I wasn't having all these experiences. But I did get really into art in high school. I had a great art teacher who I'm still friends with to this day. He made me feel like art wasn't just something I could do as a hobby, but it was something I could do for life. So I really developed my art at that time, and I went off to college. My freshman year of college, I found out that my dad got sick, so I came home to take care of him. And when I came home to take care of him, all my gifts opened back up, and I would place my hands on him, and healing was coming through, and we were having really beautiful experiences. I started to see into my own past lives during that time and have dreams and visions, and it seemed like the things that I had buried came back alive. So in terms of gifts. So
and this was all before you started your Reiki training, correct?
It was. So what happened was I was young at the time. I was 18, and I didn't totally understand energy then, and I would go into his room and say, God, give this to me, I'll take care of it. It was really hard to see him suffer. And I thought, oh, well, God can give this to me and he can go free. And so one day I went in to say that same prayer, and I was stopped by a voice that wasn't my own, who I've now since called my angel of light. And she kind of scolded me, and she said, don't pray that anymore. Wow. She said, place your hands on him and healing will come through. And so I started to place my hands on him, and I would feel a stream of energy come from outside of me in and through. And we had some really beautiful experiences. That was probably towards the end of his life, maybe 3 months towards the end. But from what I've come to learn later, healing at the end of life is just as important as healing at any stage in life.
Absolutely.
And so 2 days before my dad passed, I saw an angel behind his bed, and I knew that the angel was there to escort him to heaven. 2 days later, it was my 20th birthday, and he passed. And so before that, we were able to have many conversations about life. He would ask me, do I believe in God and angels, and do I believe that life goes on? And you know, when you have to look a man in the eye at the end of his life, you want to be
dad,
my dad.
especially, yeah.
We were, best friends, kindred spirits. And so I really went inside and said, what do I believe about all this? And I told him, we do go on. This is not the end. God is real, angels are real. And he said, we will find a way to be together. And after he passed, maybe 3 weeks went by, and I started having dreams about him, but also I started dreaming about my guides, my spiritual guides, and I would wake up and I'd see Native Americans with rattles and healing tools in my bedroom.
Wow.
And that's when I sought out Reiki and Rickie, and my first session with you was incredible, and I remember knowing after my first session that I would do this.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I don't know if this was your first session, but early
was.
on, it was the first one. You know what I'm going to share. So I felt during the Reiki session with Kelly, I had my hand on her hand, and I felt her dad's hand on top of mine.
Yeah.
And it was like a velvety blanket, and when I took my hand away, there was a handprint that was way bigger than my own. I tried putting my hand in, it just, so it was so real and powerful that he was there with us. And Kelly actually painted that session. I think it was that session. I have a original Kelly painting in my Reiki room. Shows her on the table with me at her feet, and she with a beautiful purple aura, which is definitely my thing, and her Native American spirit guide at her head.
Yes.
So it's really, really powerful and a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was when my healing journey started. And when I was healing over my dad, I would see that art was a newer thing for me in my life, but healing went way back and was very ancient in my timeline.
Yes.
And so for me, getting back into healing, Reiki was my avenue to do that. And so from that time, I really just kind of developed the art still, but then also was getting into healing. And then I got pregnant with my daughter. This was 6 years ago. And I had a really beautiful pregnancy. I loved being pregnant. Towards the end of my pregnancy, I started having really intense deja vu. And I had 3 dreams in a row, the 3 days leading up to my birth, of a red-tailed hawk. And the red-tailed hawk is very symbolic for me, spirit guide. And the hawk, in the first dream, it dropped a feather, and the feather landed straight up in my backyard. And I knew that meant that Poppy was coming from heaven to earth, and that she would be here and she would be okay.
Awesome.
And the third dream, the hawk was flying eye level with me, but it was bleeding out, but it didn't die, it just kept flying. And at the time, I thought that meant, oh, my water's going to break, I'll give birth. And so I go in to give birth, and I'm in pushing labor. I get a text from a dear friend of mine who's also a medium. I didn't know it at the time, but she was tuning in to me as I was giving birth. And she texted me and she said, Kelly, if you find yourself in any trouble, call on Mother Mary to intervene on your behalf. And so I kind of just tucked that away. I gave birth to my daughter. They put her on my chest. We had an amazing experience first meeting each other. I looked at my husband and I said, this is so surreal. And then and I'm so glad my husband got a picture of this, but she had put her hand on my chin like this.
Gosh.
And I felt like we just fit together like a puzzle piece. And I was so, so happy. And then I realized that the doctor had come up on my right. The doctor handed Poppy to Matt, and she was pushing down on my stomach from outside of it, and I was in excruciating pain. And after having just given birth, I thought that was the most painful thing I had ever gone through, and this was like 10 times worse.
Wow.
And then I looked down, and there was blood everywhere, and I thought, okay, something is wrong here. And the doctor said, we're going in for emergency surgery. And the last thing I remember is looking over, and Matt's holding Poppy, and she's crying, and all I wanted to do was feed her. Yes. And I thought, well, I'm her food source. And it just pained me greatly that she was going without food even. That was another big part of that. So I consciously put a wet washcloth over my eyes because I didn't want to see what was going on in the emergency room. And the doctor's wheeling me out, and I remembered my text that my friend had sent. And I said, I literally threw up a Hail Mary, and I said, Mary, please intercede on my behalf. Like, there is nothing I can do in this moment. I had to surrender.
Wow.
And that was probably the most surrendered I've ever been in my life, because there was not one thing I could do. Yes. And so I'm in the emergency room, and I'm acutely aware of everybody in the room. Everything's telepathic. I can feel everybody's feelings. There's some people in the room that are neutral, meaning they're not giving or taking energy from me. The doctor and a few of the other people were neutral energy. I could tell my experience was negatively affecting some people in the room. There was a girl shadowing the doctor, and I could tell that my experience was she was questioning if she ever wanted to have kids because of that.
Wow.
But
and this is all without your seeing eyes. This
yes.
is just you tuning in and intuiting. Yeah.
Yes, and so I did know that she would go on to have kids, but in the moment she was really scared about my situation. There was a guy in the back, and this is at night. I gave birth to Poppy around 8 p.m., and the surgery wasn't over until about midnight. And there was a guy in the back of the room, and all he wanted to do was go home and heat up a frozen pizza.
Oh my.
And that made me laugh. I had no judgment towards any of these people. I was just aware and observing. And
the laughter probably was good in that moment.
It was good for me, yes. I thought I could eat some pizza too. And then there was one person out of all the people in the room who was completely of service, completely. It's like he left his ego. He didn't have an ego from what I was sensing. It was like he was just completely there for me. And I called him my earth angel.
Wow.
And he was very supportive. He kept putting his hand on my shoulder. He'd say, "How are you, honey? How are you, sweetie? Do you need anything?"
Wow.
I felt like he kept my dignity alive in that situation. I was convulsing and shaking a lot. I don't know why, but I couldn't stop convulsing. And so he brought me a blanket, and I felt like the weight of the blanket helped.
Yes.
Things like that. And just feeling his energy, I thought, wow, this guy he's something else.
Yeah, the energy that you bring to every relationship, every circumstance, every interaction really matters.
It does. And so after I was focused on the room, I looked up, and maybe 3 feet to my right on a cloud, I saw Mary, my dad, 2 guardian angels, and my Native American spirit guide, and they were all lined up. But Mary was bigger than everybody. She was taller. And she didn't say anything, but she kept her eyes on me, and everybody on the cloud was just kind of there for me. And I was so thankful that they were there. And it was like I thought, she heard my prayer. Like, she actually heard my prayer. She's here.
She gathered the rest.
She gathered, yes. And that was another thing I learned, that when people ask for help, it is there whether you see it or not. That is very important.
Great lesson.
Yes. Just because I saw it, I thought, I know this cloud of witness, whoever it is for anybody else, they are there.
Cloud of witness. That's very powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she didn't speak, but my dad did all the talking. And he said, focus up here, focus on us, don't focus on the room. And so I focused on them, and my dad would speak a sentence 1 second later, the doctor would say verbatim what my dad said. And then he would speak another sentence, and the doctor would speak verbatim what he said. And everything was telepathic, and I said, "What's going on here?" And he said, "The spirit world is always one step ahead of the earthly world. Like, we know what's going to happen before they do." And he was also saying, "This is way more real than anything going on down there, or just as real."
Right, because if there was any inkling of not trusting
Yes.
that this was real,
Yeah.
that was great confirmation.
It was. So I paid attention to my cloud of people for a while, and then I looked up above them, and the minute I looked up above them, I'm out of my body, and I'm with God. And it happened like that. I mean, it was like so fast. And I'm aware that my body's down there, and I just was so happy. I felt so free. My first thought was, "Oh my God, you do exist."
Oh, literally.
Literally. And I remembered being a kid. Well, I have a pre-birth memory of being with God and then coming down here.
Wow.
And when I was here as a kid, I thought, well, we were so connected, and now I feel like you're far away or separate. And so in that moment when I said that, it was like a remembrance of, no, God's always here. It's just sometimes the veil between heaven and earth, it feels like we are far away, but we're not.
It's interesting because I always have this intuitive knowing when I see a newborn to look deeply in their eyes, because they have been the closest to God, and I really feel that. And then by the time they're old enough to talk about it, we forget.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because when Poppy was born, I physically felt and saw an entire angelic realm come into the hospital room with her. And it was a light blue energy, a blue that is rarely seen here. I couldn't even pick it out. And it was palpable. And I remember thinking, every child that's born, and even every child that will pass in a miscarriage, the entire angelic realm is there to meet them, bring them here, and also, you know, if it's a miscarriage, take them back to heaven. Like, we are all escorted. But that angelic realm stayed in that hospital room the whole week we were there, which was really powerful. And even when we got home, and then it started to lift a little, but I thought, this is really interesting. Like, all kids come in with this choir around them. So they
escort you in, and they escort you whenever it's time for the next round.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? I told Poppy, my daughter Poppy, that she's 6 now, and I said, "Poppy, when you were born, all the angels made sure you got from my belly to earth." And she goes, "No, Mama, they actually brought me from heaven to your belly to earth."
Wow.
And I thought, yes, that is exactly right. So
kids know.
They do know. They do
She's
know.
very sensitive, like you.
Yes. And so now I'm with God. I feel amazing. I'm aware of my body, but I could care less. Like, I feel amazing. Everything is known. There's no judgment. I am known. I don't need to explain a thing. There's, like I said, no judgment. I am so loved. Like, I've never felt so loved.
Do you have a sense that you are pure energy at that point?
Everything was white.
So you see your body, but you're just the essence of yourself.
Yes, and it's like we were all floating in one. So, like, God was all white light. I was white light, but somehow I could sense I was in there, but I was, like, absorbed by God.
Wow.
But I still had a personality, and that was very interesting to me. And I thought it was, like, I kind of loved my personality. I thought, wow, there's, like, humor there, and there's all this stuff that's still me, but with zero baggage from the earthly plane.
Yeah, more freedom, more expansion, right?
Yes.
All that we think, but you know.
Yeah, it was incredible. And then my next thought, and this was all telepathic, was to thank God for my life. I was so thankful for my life. And it was, I could feel that it is a gift to be given a life here, and it's an honor, and it feels like winning the lottery. Sometimes on Earth, I didn't really feel like that. It felt like, you know, life was happening to me, not for me. And in that state, I thought, no, like
Everything is part of
everything is
who
part,
you
yes.
are and who you are becoming, and the gifts and strengths.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And so I just was so thankful for my life. I thank God for being an artist because that was very important to me. When I thank God for being an artist, it felt like every thought became a portal. So God pulled up my life in a line from birth till death of me, Kelly, Diane, McGee, Curran, and he showed me from here to here was I developed the art and did other things. There was a block in the middle, which was what I was experiencing right then and there. And then he said, if you choose to come back, there's this block over here. This is your future. It's laid out for you if you so choose, and it deals with healing. And I felt into that, and I thought, oh, that feels really nice.
Yes.
And then I said, thank you. I was so thankful, and I said, thank you for my dad. Thank you for allowing me to take care of him in this life. That was very, very important to me to be able to do that. And again, it was like a portal opened up, and God showed my dad, who was well and beautiful in heaven and just smiling and happy, and I had just seen him on my cloud,
Right,
witness,
right.
so I knew
In
that
that same state,
in
right?
that same state.
Yeah.
And God said, there's nothing you could have done to prevent his passing. And I didn't know it at the time, but I think subconsciously I thought, why did my angel of light teach me hands-on healing to give to my dad if he still passed? I think there was a part of me that thought, oh, well,
You hadn't quite made that disconnect from healing and curing.
yes,
right?
that's exactly
Yes.
right. And God showed me my dad's life, and he's like, your dad's life was about so much more than how it ended. In fact, it really isn't about how we leave. And he showed me my dad's childhood and his life on earth, and he said, your dad had a mission, he fulfilled that, and now he's home, but that connection is always there. And that was really a beautiful thing to see, because everything was shown from a higher perspective. So as I grieved terribly his passing on earth, when I saw it from that perspective, it changed the way I saw things.
It was more of a celebration, wasn't it?
It was a celebration.
Wow.
Yes. And so
And we can choose that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
These are things that I've really intuitively felt, but you are making it real. Thank you.
Yes, and one of the most profound things my guide has ever told me is death is not the absence of life, it is the presence of love without form.
Can you look at the camera and say that one more
Yes.
time? That is so profound. I mean, that
Yes.
gets me every time.
Yes, death is not the absence of life, it is the presence of love without form.
Love without form.
Mm-hmm.
Love without boundaries.
Yeah.
Love without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's expansive, and it was such a higher perspective. Everything was known. Everything was taken care of. Everything had a place,
All has purpose.
Everything. That's exactly right. And so I was just so thankful. I thanked God for my daughter. I saw her on my chest, and I thought, wow, we only had a moment together, but that was all we needed to solidify our connection.
And her gift of the life into the world.
Yes. And I said to God, if bringing her into this world is the last thing I do, I'm at peace, because I feel that was the greatest thing I could have ever done, was allow another life to come in. And God said,
I feel that.
Yes, yeah, yes. And God said, are you at peace with everyone? And
Wow,
just
that's a pretty
then,
deep introspective
yeah,
question.
yes. And just then a line of thousands of people appeared before me. Everybody I've ever met in my life. It started with people I see every day, and it ended with somebody I just randomly saw somebody I saw out of my car one day. Synchronistically. And the line went super fast because I didn't have karma with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
When it got to Matt, my husband, God said, I'm going to show you his future if you choose to stay in heaven. And I saw Matt would have a really difficult 2 years. It would just be very hard for him. He would be a single dad, and I saw he'd be an amazing father, and but that he would go on and live a happy life, and all I wanted in that state was for him to be happy. And I was so thankful. I kept thanking God for our relationship, because I said, so many people struggle on earth with relationships, but we never had that. Like, we've always been so close, and we've really made such a great life for ourselves. And I was so thankful for him.
Yeah.
And then there was no time, but it was like time stopped when I got to Poppy. And that's when I was shown her future if I chose to stay in heaven. And I saw, she'd have a great life, but it seemed like there was a void missing, which was me. And that by the time she got to be in her late teens, 20s, she would have a really difficult time, and she would question why she grew up without a mom, and she would blame herself and kind of take that on herself. And not only was I seeing it, but I was feeling it.
Yes.
And it was so painful for me to feel that. And I kept thinking, that's not true. That's not true. Like, her coming into this earth was a miracle. She did great. It was my body that had the issue. It had nothing to do with her. And I kept thinking, I can't let her believe a lie. Like, it wasn't even true. And so that really upset me. That was the first time I felt like a very strong sadness from that state.
Yes.
Because I just felt so high. Like, I just was like, wow, this vibration is incredible. So that was really, really upsetting to me. And from outside of my body, a feeling came and welled up within me, and I call it my warrior spirit. And I have never felt that before, and it welled up, and I said, oh no, before that, I have to say this. After I saw Poppy's future, I visualized my life with her if I chose to stay on earth.
Wow.
So this wasn't coming from God necessarily. This was me searching, like, what could it look like if I stayed on earth? And all the visuals I had were of me holding her hand at every stage of her life. As a baby, as a toddler, as a young adult. And I saw myself with her. And
She needed that other piece of the puzzle with
yes,
her.
Yes, and I
Wow.
saw that I was the only one that could feel that.
Exactly.
I was her mom.
Exactly.
And so my warrior spirit came in, and all of a sudden I said, I am Poppy's mom. I choose to live. And I was back in my body.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, was it a pop back
Oh,
in? Like
right
it was
in.
a pop back out?
It was a pop. I mean, it was
Wow.
faster than that. I mean, I was
Wow.
up with God, but then I was back in my body.
Oh,
And it
what a
was
feeling that must have been.
It was very painful. I knew where I had just come from, but now I'm back in my body, and I feel so sick. And I spoke for the first time in the surgery, and I said, I'm going to be sick. And they were wrapping up the surgery, and the doctor said, you shouldn't have to be sick. And I was very confused.
Because they're looking at the logistics of the
Yes.
anesthesia, and this was not about that.
No. And I remember thinking, well, I just came from a place where all is known. I don't even have to say what I'm feeling. Everything is known.
Vibration is so high.
Yes, and now I have to explain myself. Like, I said I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. It was very confusing until I thought about this later, and I realized that the pop back in, I feel, made me sick.
Yeah.
And so
It's hard to fit that big, beautiful
It
spirit
is.
in that little tiny body, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
And then finally the doctor motioned to a nurse and said, bring something over. And I just, like, violently threw up. And now I'm back in the room, and I'm very disoriented. I feel really, everything is, like, painful, and I just feel terrible. And I just wanted my earth angel. So now the doctor had spoke to me. I don't remember what she said, and I'm getting, leaving the room. I took the washcloth off my eyes, and right beside me with his hand on my shoulder was my earth angel. And I looked right into his eyes. All I wanted to do was thank him But the minute I looked into his eyes, I welled up with tears and I couldn't speak.
Wow.
Because it was like I was connecting the dots of like what happened before my experience to I just came from my experience. And I felt like, and here I am, I'm a new mom. And they brought Poppy to me right away.
Wow.
And I just couldn't process what was happening.
But he's a feeler too.
Yes, and
I can tell.
and he was saying, you know, you did so good, and just reassuring me, and truly was my anchor. I mean, seriously, I feel like if he wasn't in the room, it would have been a different story.
Kept you grounded while your spirit was.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And then so I didn't get to thank him in the room, but as luck would have it, my sister, who's a surgical tech, knew him and knew that he happened to be in my surgery. And so I got a letter to him through my sister to thank him.
Lovely. Gratitude.
Yes.
One of the Reiki healing principles.
That's right.
You know, that's an important takeaway. Yeah.
It is. So now I'm out of surgery and back in the room, and I cried myself to sleep every night. I couldn't, but it felt like my nervous system was
dysregulated.
Yes, and I wasn't one of those people that came back and was like fully healed. Like a lot of, I've read some stories where people come out of that state and they're like miraculously healed. I kind of understood from seeing my second part of life that healing, I was going to learn through healing myself to then offer that to people. So my physical body, to this day, I'm working on healing from that experience, but I've learned a lot since then.
Yes.
And
there's no end to healing, of course. It's a constant journey, but it always needs to start with you on every level. And that was the lesson that you bring into your own healing work that you offer now.
That's right.
You know, and that as you, even though you are still healing, as you share Reiki and other healing, it's flowing through you as well.
That's right.
And helping to heal you every time.
That's exactly right. And so it took me a while to talk about this. I didn't tell anybody for a very long time, but as bad as things were physically at times for me, my whole spiritual life was opening up. I started having dreams, visions. When I went back to paint, my painting was completely different. The subject matter was different. It was almost like painting became a channel.
Yes, it is.
And I was painting things where I didn't know what they meant until months later. I would understand what they meant.
Wow, it would just come out and you just
and
let yourself follow the lead, so to speak.
Yes, and I'd kind of step aside, and when I came back, I'd say, oh, this is nice, but what's this about? And then a few months later, I'd find out. That was interesting, and I felt like I kind of went into a bit of a cave there for a while, one, in order to heal, but also in order to find out and integrate my experience. So I started meditating regularly, and that was very helpful for me to bring this down to earth, understand it, but also meet my guides in spirit and know that I'm not alone in this, and that the healing work was going to encompass working with them as well. Not just with healing, but with the art too.
Yes.
And I had a lot, some people say, like, well, where was your life review? I had a life review, but it came later, and it came in a dream, which was really a visitation. And so in this visitation, I'm back on my cloud again. I'm surrounded by my ancestors, and they're washing my feet. And they said, you're worthy to receive this gift. You're worthy to receive this gift.
We are worthy to receive. That's a message that we need to remind ourselves all the time, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes.
And from that, a door opened into my next part of the dream, which was very real, and it was my main guide stepped in, who I call White Bear. He's Native American. And right when I saw him, I just was like, I know you. And noon. I just got
have
chills.
Noon. Yes,
Yes.
all this time.
And there were 7 of us in this almost like a cave. If you think of like times in the Mayan times, right? It was
Okay,
like
yeah.
Machu Picchu type of
Yeah.
situation. And we're all wearing orange, but our guides are wearing white. And I said, "Why are we wearing this? You're wearing that." My guide said, "You're wearing orange because you're still attached to the mind. We have transcended the mind."
Wow.
And so I was focused on my guide, and he said, "I'm going to give you a life review." And he took me back through my eyes. He said, "I'm going to show you your life through your eyes first." And we went back through all the more difficult times in my life, but also the good times as well, starting from the most recent. And like we had unfortunately had a miscarriage after Poppy. He took me through that. He took me through the birth of Poppy. He took me through things that happened with my dad, back to my childhood. And I saw where I had been very emotional. A lot of these things, it took me a while to move through. And I saw that I kind of felt like I let myself down sometimes. And then he said, "I'm going to show you your life through my eyes." And I was literally then peering out through his eyes, seeing the same exact events, but through his perspective.
Mm-hmm. The higher perspective.
The higher perspective. And he said, all these times you felt like you failed, where you let yourself down, where you didn't rise up to the occasion, he said, "I see it as these were the times you were brave."
Oh,
And it
wow.
completely changed my perspective on my whole life. And it felt like rain just washed away all this stuff I had built up in my life. And then he stood in front of me and he said, "Now I'm going to give you a new name." And it was a spiritual name that my guides would refer to me as. And he said, "Your new name is Brave Healer." And I accepted it.
I love it.
And I said,
and you
"Okay."
can really take it
Feel
on
it.
now.
Yes.
You're
And
ready.
I'm ready. And as he said that, my orange cloth started weaving in white.
Oh my gosh.
And I woke up from my dream, my visitation, and that that to me is just as clear as the near-death experience after
Wow.
Poppy. That's how you know
Wow.
when your dreams are real visitations. And so my journey thus far has been very much an internal vision quest, where I'm just integrating, grounding it all, but also connecting and feeling more like a bridge between heaven and earth after all this. And not being afraid of it. You know, at first I
Awesome.
thought, what are people going to think when I have all these guides and I'm talking to, my spirit team and
Yes.
meditating, and my paintings have changed. But at the same time, it's like seeing it from God's perspective. It's all laid out. It's all laid out for us.
Wow. You are shining and radiating while you're sharing this. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, I feel
Mhm.
that. That was one of my questions beforehand is, how has this changed your life on a daily basis?
Yes.
But you're different and you
Yes.
radiate a different energy and you can keep things in a different, higher
Yes.
perspective, and you can remember to be grateful.
Mhm.
And, that's all we do. One day at a time, one breath at a time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, bringing ourselves back.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Kelly, would you like to share a little bit about the artwork that you brought? Because this one right behind me, everybody
Yes.
see them?
This is called The Intercession of Mary, and it's literally about me seeing Mary on the cloud. It's as close as I could get to how I actually saw her. I was really trying to get her gaze, because all she did was stare at me. Not stare, but like you could feel energy coming from her.
Right, well, we radiate energy through our eyes for sure.
Yes.
The flowers in this, you can't really tell,
Yeah.
but they're all dimensional.
Yes.
And the gold is metallic.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Yes.
Yes. And this piece, this is about pure surrender. So this was the moment of my surrender. And it shows the 3 levels I felt like I was visiting, which is another thing I really learned is what we focus on is very important. So I was focusing on the room, and what I was getting was learning
More
about
of
people,
that.
more of that. The minute I looked up and focused on the middle ground, is what I would say, between heaven and earth,
Yes.
that I was peering into that and receiving that energy. The minute I looked up even higher and focused on God, that's where I was.
The truth
That's
of
a
who you are.
Yes, that was a huge learning lesson for me. Be mindful of what you're focusing on and thinking about.
Yes.
It changes our daily life.
Right, and by doing our own work,
Yes.
whether it be your self-Reiki, whether it be your meditation, to keep your vibration up,
Yes.
so that you can see things from that higher perspective and not get so sucked into the waters of
Yes.
the drama,
Yes.
and you can float along instead of
Yeah.
struggling along,
That's
right?
exactly
And I have
right.
another one over here, Kelly, that I will lift up here. Hang on one second. It's just amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so this piece is about meditation, and it's about meeting your higher self in meditation and almost becoming like a mirror. And this represents our spirit that is eternal, kind of like how we look when we're in spirit, if you will. And then meditation to me is like being under this tree and connecting to all that is. So you're connected to earth, but you're also
Yes.
connected to spirit.
Yes. Grounded and connected.
That's
That
right.
is the balance of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, meditation isn't escaping, it's actually revealing the truth and then being able to shift our energy from that place and then bring it down here.
That's right, so that we can, the idea isn't to stay up
Yeah.
there, it is
Bring it
to
down.
be here,
Yes.
be here now, bring
Right.
the gifts,
Yes.
share the healing
Mhm.
on an everyday basis
That's right.
with ourselves, each other, and the bigger world.
Exactly.
Wow. So was there anything else that you had wanted to share? Any important lesson that you want to share with the audience here? Because this is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, I know for sure there is no death, that we are eternal beings, we go on, death is nothing to fear. There might be some pain leading up, but my gosh, the minute you're out, and there's no concerns. Everything is alive and well in God, and God exists in us. We are never abandoned by God. My mom had told me recently of a woman who, right before she passed, she felt abandoned by God, and that was reason enough for me to share my story.
Yes.
Because I said we are never abandoned by God. We are always connected, always, and we always have help. And whenever we call on anybody for help, our ancestors, guides, God, they are there whether we see it or not. We always have help. We're never alone.
And
in
we
this
just
life.
need to remember to ask.
Exactly.
Because spiritual help follows the same laws of free will.
Yes.
So if you want them to be with you,
Ask.
invite them, ask them,
That's it.
feel it
Yes.
and trust it. Whether you see it, just know it.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And that's a great point, because when I started meditating and I wanted to connect with my guides, I would lay a blanket out for them and I'd say, this is my offering for you to say, feel free to come and tell me whatever you want to tell me, or I'll hear whatever I need to hear in the moment.
What do I need to know in
Yes.
this moment
Yep,
for the greatest and highest good of all?
that's right.
Wow.
And self-compassion. Be
Right, because
compassionate
there's
with
no
yourself.
judgment. It's
Yes.
all unconditional love.
Yeah.
When you see it through those eyes of the bigger, higher, wider, longer perspective,
Yeah. Yes.
everything has purpose.
It
Whether
does.
you can know it in that moment or not,
That's right.
there are strengths and gifts that you gain in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
Beautiful.
What a great affirmation for the things that I have learned, through my Reiki work.
Yes.
To have your very real experience. And I know that this took you a long time to be ready to share, and you're ready.
Thank you.
And I'm so honored to be part of your journey. Love you with all my
Love you
heart,
too.
and I know that everyone is going to feel this. So thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Namaste.